Life is filled with unique experiences that are shaped and blended by race, ethnicity, and culture. This thing called life is a space where we can share our experiences so we can learn, grow, and empower change. Our logo was created by Marianne Louise. Thank you, Marianne. The music you hear at the beginning and end is by Coma Media from Pixbay.com. Today I interview Sue Italiano, who shares her experience around healing, journaling, meditation, and intuition.
Alrighty.
Okay. So we met it was like about a week or so ago, and I noticed you had, you were talking about meditation, so that's how we kind of connected, and you sent me a link to I forget the website. What was the website called?
StoryCorps.
And in StoryCorps, someone interviews you for about like 11 minutes or so in it. And in the 11 minutes, you talk about journaling, you talk about meditation, and intuition, and you talk about some books you've written. And I'm wondering, where would you like to start?
Okay. Let's see. I guess I'll start with what I was talking about in the interview. Basically, about 10 years ago, I started consistently journaling. I was going through a very intense time in my life, based around my mother's passing. So I was receiving many, many messages. I will interchange the word spirit and intuition. To me, they're the same, but I use the word spirit a lot. That soft inner voice that we all have that we can hear when we're still, or meditate. So basically, about 10 years ago, when I was seeing all kinds of things having to do with a generational trauma that I had been carrying with my mother throughout life, didn't really understand all of it, but I was seeing amazing things before she passed, when she passed, and after she passed. And the messages were very intense, so there weren't a whole lot of people I could talk to that I felt like I could talk to. So journaling was very cathartic for me because I could get it out without, at first I was afraid, I was afraid of what people were going to think, you know how that goes. So basically, as I kept journaling over 10 years, I liken it to a puzzle. So there were all these pieces. I could have denied the pieces, but when the pieces just kept fitting together to form a big picture, that was hard for me to deny. So basically, over the 10 years, just I saw these stories develop. They really kind of blew me away. So basically, over the 10 years, one writing turned out to be about the generational trauma with my mom. What I had been carrying with her throughout life that I did not fully understand kind of came together for me. Like I said, through many pieces, or I call them spirit signs, messages, intuition, through books, movies, songs, nature, dreams, thoughts, all kinds of ways. And it kept forming together to help me understand what what the generational trauma actually was, and what had occurred before I was even born, and I knew had been affecting my mother throughout life. So it all just kind of got pieced together. She actually could not pass until she dealt with the trauma. So that kind of all got pieced together. And then I just saw amazing things in spirit after she passed. And, it sounds insane. I mean, it sounded insane to me for a long time. But I saw healing take place. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Encanto.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, that to me, I thought that was profound,
Mm-hmm.
that movie, because I thought it showed what a generational trauma was, how it affected the roles in the family, and
Mm-hmm.
how it can be healed
Mm-hmm.
when it's brought into awareness. But they did it kind of in a light way. They took a heavy topic and
Mm-hmm.
made it as light as they could. So it was very similar to that, what developed through messages. And that's what I saw basically take place with my mother. So, and the whole family. So that kind of came together over the 10 years. And I ended up, well, my motto is it came by spirit, it goes by spirit. And truthfully, I didn't want to write. I didn't want to put it out there at first because
Mm-hmm.
it's my heart,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very personal. It's very personal to them, even though she's passed. But and after a while, I said, if this can help other people, if this is something that should be out there that can help other people, then I should put it out there. So then the second one, as I continued, well, after that, I actually went through a very desperate time in my life where I had a nervous breakdown. I was pretty much laid out physically, mentally, spiritually. I was sick a lot. So I had a lot of time because I could not work. But the good thing that came out of that was I started to meditate
Mm-hmm.
and I developed a meditation practice because I had a lot of time. So as I did that over the, later part of the 10 years, maybe the last 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
I was just amazed at what would come to me when I just allowed myself to be still, learn different meditation techniques where I could be still and the things that would come to me. So kind of the second half was in my journaling, I would write down all the messages I received through meditation. And that developed, I didn't expect this at all. That developed into the second writing of what is an empath, who was I as an empath. This whole tree image developed for me that I go to regularly still in meditation with all kinds of meanings of how to. I think part of the reason I had the nervous breakdown was because my whole life, I was taking in all this energy
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't understand that. I thought everybody did that and I just thought it was normal. So I would say the first maybe 55 years of my life, I was just giving, giving, giving to other people, not taking care of myself. Whatever energies came in, I just let them come in. I had no boundaries. And, hence why I think I had a nervous breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
So then in meditation, like this all got pieced together for me and to this tree place and the meaning of the roots and the trunk and the whole tree and the physical meaning, the spiritual meaning. And all these pieces came together about what I needed to heal. And it was a slow process in healing, but to understand being an empath and the trauma and the energy, different techniques I needed, like boundaries and all kinds of things. If you read about anything about empaths, you'll hear a lot about that. How to have boundaries, how not to just let all kinds of energies take over you. Um, how to use it as a gift, how to find out that it's a gift. It can be a strong gift, but then I know there's the mental institutions and the drug addiction clinics are full of empaths.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because they don't understand. They don't understand what they've been through. They don't understand what's coming at them. And it's a lot.
Yeah.
It can be very intense. So, hence, so I think it's really important information. So this kind of developed for me, and I was like, wow. And it's like one day I look back and I'm like, this is incredible. And I said, I got to write about this. So, and like I said, it's an image I go to every time I meditate now, because it took me from being completely laid out, not wanting to live anymore, to feeling more hopeful and back to life again today. Let's see. Well, did you have any questions? I just said a lot.
I know, and like I mean, I've got like I feel like I have 100 questions just because as I'm listening, it's very much a journey.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and one thing that came to mind when you talk about tree is like the tree of life. That's sort of what comes to mind
Right.
for me. And
Right.
and you mentioned how you were taking in a lot, and I feel like at one point you kind of realized this is a thing. Like I'm an empath, and I absorb other people's like energies, and I think just coming to that realization is powerful.
Right.
And I
Right.
think I love that you kind of shared that a little bit in your story, because I think other people are going through life and they just don't know, right? They're not aware.
Right. Right.
I think that is a beautiful first step for someone, just to be like, hey, this is the thing. And then we can kind of start doing work of like, all right, are these my feelings, or is this
Right.
someone else's?
Right.
Discerning the two. And so what was coming up for me is like this idea of grounding. Do you feel like that was something that was super helpful for
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. Definitely. Grounding still is,
Mm-hmm.
was the hardest thing for me. I think I was so like in a spiritual realm, like I'm very sensitive to the
Mm-hmm.
spiritual realm and what's not seen. So for me, I was kind of like floating. Like it was really hard for me to put my feet on the ground and come back to earth, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And even in meditation too, it's like that place I go to, I'm like, wow, I want to stay here. you know so even in that, I have to like continually like bring, that's part of the steps of bringing myself back
Mm-hmm.
to the present,
Having a
which I did
balance.
before. I mean, I was very much like zoned in the spiritual realm,
Mm-hmm.
and I really didn't want to like come back here.
Come back to earth.
Yeah, and I kind of went through that in that generational trauma.
Okay.
I was like in a whole nother realm for a while. I kind of got caught in between,
Okay.
and there was a period that was awful, because it was like I couldn't live and I couldn't die. It was like I got caught. You know how they kind of say purgatory is one word, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of other words where there's unresolved issues and in between,
Mm-hmm. The
you
space in
know?
between.
Huh?
The space in between.
Right. Like between spirit and earth, where
Mm-hmm.
people are still resolving issues. And I saw that in the generational trauma. But the beauty of it, I say, is how many people die with unfinished business?
Right.
A lot,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you think if there's hope for healing after someone passes, I mean, how many people need to hear that?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
Absolutely.
mean?
Absolutely.
Because it was like, if this was it,
Right.
you know, it would look a little bleak as far as I'm concerned. But the intuition pieces, I think for me, what was huge, I was an overthinker.
Mm-hmm.
Still probably am sometimes, but the beautiful thing about intuition is spirit. And, granted, I didn't get this all on my own. I didn't, it led me to books. It led me to people who were experienced in these things. And I'd start reading and I'd be like, oh, okay. Like that's what's going on. And even the term empath, you didn't hear the term empath until what? Maybe 10 years ago?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I run into a lot of people, like there's still a lot of people that don't understand, they just think you're sensitive or whatever, but
Right.
there's a lot more to it than that.
And I think
Yeah.
sometimes like we can like also like get caught up because like as we're learning about new things, we kind of like as we start growing and changing and healing, we tend to attract people that are
Mm,
at similar places and view the
right.
world and view themselves in a similar way. And I feel like that can be like a beautiful thing because like when we heal, we are offered new experiences with new people.
Yes.
Um,
That definitely happened for me. But the
yeah,
fact I grew up in a very strict born again, you
conservative.
know, scenario, and I was
Hmm.
constantly told you got to believe like this,
Hmm.
and all the dysfunction was tied up in it, and I was constantly told you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're
Hmm.
wrong. You got to believe like this, and
Hmm.
my perspective was always so much bigger, but I didn't know anybody like that. And I kept thinking, what? I'm alone. I'm alone. Where's my tribe? Where's my tribe? So it wasn't until my 50s and I started going through this stuff, I started meeting all these people,
Hmm.
like you said. And I'm
Hmm.
like, this is so cool. Like, where have you been all my life? you know? But you're right. And then
Yeah.
it just keeps rolling.
Absolutely. And I wanted to touch in because I heard you say, when you're in these like in spirit realm, and I'm wondering, was that a process to kind of get into, as you say, the spirit realm, or was it like just like for you, it's like quick and easy, or was it more of like
Oh,
a
no,
process?
no. I mean, it's a practice. Meditation is definitely a practice. And I say in these writings, things came to me, but
Hmm.
probably the majority of the times I got nothing. You know what I mean? Or I felt nothing.
Hmm.
And there were a lot of times I got very discouraged
Hmm.
and very depressed. But then the times things did come through, it's like, wow. But that wasn't the majority of times. Yeah, majority of the times, and there was a
Hmm.
lot of struggle involved in between all that. You know how life is. It's a
Hmm.
constant practice. Like you just got to do it all the time, because things are constantly changing and different things are coming at you. So, yeah, it's a constant practice. No, I have not aced it by any by any means. No. I just think that it's just so beautiful though. I mean, it's there for everyone,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
I mean, it's no respecter of persons, but I think unfortunately a lot of us, including myself, have to get to really low points
Hmm.
or really desperate
Hmm.
before we'll go there,
Hmm.
you know?
What
And so,
comes up for me is because I know you had mentioned um, substance use and like people are in addiction, like, and that's totally part of my story. And I really like that you kind of mentioned that we kind of have to go through some things. Um, and I know for me, it's like I'm grateful for the things that I've gone through because I wouldn't see myself or the world the way I do now. And it sounds like for you, it's very similar. That like it's
it is.
almost
I mean, I'm sorry.
no, I was
Go
gonna say
ahead.
it's almost like I mean, you're grateful for these things that happen. It's almost like they had to happen almost. Yeah.
Well, you hear a lot of spiritual talk, spiritual individuals talk, and a lot of them say they had a dark night of the soul,
Mhm.
or something preceding. I mean, honestly, if somebody said to me, "Would you go through it again?" I'd be like, mm.
I feel like I would have to. I was like, I don't. It's like it's almost like for
I
me,
don't
there's like no
know.
other choice. Like, it's like if I had to, I feel like I would have to because I feel like there's a wonderful opportunity to share the stories, kind of like you had mentioned. I know when we were talking about how powerful it can be to share stories, and I think when other person can hear, a little bit of their story in you, and I think that's a
Oh
powerful thing. And
yeah.
I think if anything, you can be a wonderful example of that, like, things can be super dark right now, but they don't have to be. And there's like a lot of yeah, there's a lot of bright sunshine just after the darkness.
Right, right.
So I wanted to, like, actually one of my questions that came to my mind was, you talk about intuition, and there's like a gut feeling, but there's also a thought, like things that just come to you. And I'm wondering, how can you discern between, like, is this like a thought or a vision that's coming from like the spirit realm, or is this something that's coming from just like me, or like my brain, or things like that. So I'm wondering, how do you sort of discern between, like, where is this coming from? Is this coming from spirit, or is this coming from like my brain?
Okay, that's a good question. Let's see. I think in the beginning, when I first started going through it, like I had to do a lot of healing because I had to fight all those voices that I had grown up with that told me that was wrong,
Mm-hmm.
or that's voodoo, or whatever. You shouldn't follow that kind of thing. So that was practice healing and getting beyond that. I think in the beginning it's going to be awkward. Like in the beginning, when you start anything, you know what I mean? Like it's practice. For me, it was a book, it was people, stories, and a book that really kind of helped me. My mother in law was one of the first ones, and she just had a beautiful spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And she wasn't weird or out there, and how some people are a little out there.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know how else to say it, but she was very down to earth. But she didn't push her beliefs on you. But she had some hard deaths in her life. She had lost her husband. She had lost her daughter right after that from cancer. She had a lot of losses. But when we'd be over at her house, she would just say, and just like, "Oh, I got a message from my daughter today." And she would just say these things like naturally. And some people would say, "Oh, you're crazy." But it always kind of resonated with me because I was like, that's really
Right.
beautiful. And I would tell my husband, I'm like, first of all, how do you don't know whether it's true or not, really. And if that's going to help her get through the hard stuff in this life, then that's good enough right there. But over time, that really started to, you know, start it for
Click.
me.
Yeah.
How she I mean, she still grieves, she still missed them and everything, but how she got these messages and it was so natural. So that was kind of a beginning for me. And then she encouraged me to read. We started reading all these near death experiences and all these different kinds of books, and that kind of prepared me for what was going to happen with my mother. And my mother and her passed within a month of each other. Is that your kitty cat?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm trying
Oh, that's all
to.
right.
She wants to come visit, and I can, I can only do so much. But
That's fine. I have
she
no
wants to come
problem with our
hang out.
animal friends.
Okay, okay,
So anyway, I saw in your other interview your cat.
yeah.
That's how I knew it was your cat. Um, so basically that kind of got me rolling. And then when I was getting all these messages, when my mother was dying, I found this book called Everyday Oracles. Have you ever heard of it?
I don't think so. I'm not sure.
That's a great book.
Everyday
Um,
oracles.
by Anne Bollinger McQuaid.
Okay.
So she was taught by her father was Native American.
Mm-hmm.
So, for them, this is just natural. It's not weird.
It's
Like
just like
they
a
just
part of life and a part of what they teach.
right. They
Yeah.
just believe spirits and everything. And there's nothing weird about it. They don't have that Western culture
Mm-hmm.
type of thinking. So she came from that. So all this was very natural for her. But she had this book that just explain how you can get messages in all kinds of ways, through clouds, through dreams, through books, through movies, from people that have passed. So I found this book by intuition, and what I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that is I was in the library, I was looking for something else, and I just happened to see this book, and I was just drawn to it. So it's kind of like that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're not thinking, you're not looking. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
like, it's like you see something and there's just something, it's not rational. There's just something that draws you to it.
Right.
So if you go with that, well, the big thing is you can't question it, which you do a lot in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
You can't rationalize it because then you'll lose it. But if you go with it, you see these cool things happen and they just like keep happening. And I think over time, as you start to do that, and it's normal to like bring your mind into it,
Mm-hmm.
but I think as you build a habit of doing that, you'll see like what happens. And then you're like, wow, this is cool. And then you keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So I read this book, and that really helped me a lot because I was getting all these intense messages about my mom. And I was reading this book. I'm like, oh my God, like this is exactly what's happening to me. Right. So then, like, when I read this book, I was like, oh, okay. Like, I'm not so crazy, and
Yeah.
like, so it kind of just kept going like that. So I'm sorry, did I answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, no, I think like so what it sounds like is like because I was asking about like how can we sort of discern between like is this just like a quote unquote normal thought or like a one from that's like or if it's intuition or if it's like from the spirit realm. And it seems like one is like practice, right? You kind of just
Oh,
like got
yeah.
used to and like knowing okay
Yeah.
this isn't a spiritual experience right now. I think another part was like reading and like educating yourself.
Right.
And
And
then
hearing other people.
there
Yeah.
was also it was the a family member who sort of would kind of make this more acceptable.
Right.
And it was something that came to my mind was like sometimes like I feel like we kind of like will judge like the thoughts and that can
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
veer us off course. It's like whatever it is, just accept it. Don't try to like analyze it or
Right.
cast judgment.
Right.
Just kind of accept what it is and go from there.
Right. And it's kind of, I think us meeting was like that.
Can I can
Right.
I can I
Because I'm like
yes.
sitting there talking to my brother, and you heard me and you came over. I think that's one of those things. And you came over and said, well, I heard you talk about meditation. And then you came, I mean, really, I think that's how we got to know each
Can I
other.
can I can I can I share just a quick story behind sort of what happened? So like a lot of times what I'll do just to kind of just like as like a spiritual practice or my connection with the universe, God and spirituality is like I'll do a meditation and I'll sort of like ask a question or like and so something I asked was like, you know, can um help guide me today and give me some like reassurance that I'm like on the right track. That was essentially
Oh,
the question
cool.
that I
That's
asked.
cool.
And then a thought popped in and it was this bun shop that I've been to before. And so I was like, okay, like that's where I'll go because I've been wanting to do work, but I've wanted to like also pass out my flyer for the group meditation. So something that I've been wanting to do and get into is doing group meditations. And so when I'm in line and I hear you say, "Oh, like I want to start doing like meditations," oh, that was my sign. That was like my sign that like, okay, you're
See, you just answered the question. That's a beautiful example of
right,
it.
right. Of like,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I definitely feel like, what brought us together was sort of the connections that we have through the spirit realm, and was like, listening to you was sort of my validation. Okay, like you're on the right track, and I think just doing the interview with you right now in this moment is also um just like a validation for hopefully for you, but also for myself, that we're the two of us are heading in a spiritual direction, in a fantastic direction. And the one of the things, so
Yeah, I think meeting you is definitely a good example of that. And I think as you continue to follow that, you over time you won't doubt it as much. It's like anything you continually practice,
mhm.
it's going to become more natural as you get experience.
And I think like you said it perfectly, kind of like you just like go with the flow, and you just kind of wherever it takes you, you go there. And then the more you're in the flow, the more you're in the flow.
Right,
But it
right.
sounds like, we have to also like have a balance, and making sure that we're taking care of ourselves, and making sure that we
Oh
are like
yeah.
doing meditation and grounding. There's one thing that I wanted, well, a couple things, two questions I want to ask before we depart. And one of them was like, if someone is interested in meditation, but they like aren't sure about how to do it, or they feel like they're not, it's meditation isn't for them. Like, do you have any like words of wisdom, or any suggestions for something that's new to meditate, someone who's new to meditation and wants to get into meditating?
Yeah, I think not everything is for everybody, but the wonderful thing is there's so many kinds of meditations now. I on YouTube, like for free. There's so many different kinds of meditations. And it's like just start listening and see what resonates with you. Just go to different places and see, like, okay, I'm not really feeling it here, but I like this one. Or, I went to a Buddhist temple for a while, but the one that really resonates with me is shamanic meditation,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I've always been very connected to Native American culture beliefs, but that's not going to be for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what really works for me. Yeah, there's just so, and if you don't want to go places, like I said on YouTube for free, there's so many different meditation
Yeah,
styles, that you could just do it that way if you wanted to, or go to places. Have you ever been to Kadampa Meditation Center?
I've been, so that is a place that I've been uh trying to get to. I've been
Yeah.
curious about going there, and it just sort of hasn't sort of fallen into place, because when they were doing these meditations, I would be working, and it just like wouldn't, the schedules wouldn't quite work out. But that's a place that I've been curious about attending and going to.
Well, I forgot about that. That was a big influence on me in starting my meditation
Okay.
practice. I went there often for 2.5 years. I went there consistently in 2015. I'm not, I did learn a lot about meditation there. I had a lot of powerful experiences. I wasn't as into the teaching as like the serious, you
Mm-hmm.
know, Buddhist tradition, but they were accepting, like all different kinds of people came. The only thing that I stopped going because I liked their lunch meditation. That was just the one I really liked. And then COVID hit, of course. So then they were shut down for a long time. I think I went back once, but it seems like they don't have the meditations that I liked anymore. They have a lot of teaching
Mm-hmm.
ones, but I just like the meditations where you just went in and meditated. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it sounds like, and we've got like about like 3 minutes left. It sounds like a community was like a part that like motivated, or it was made it easier to continue doing meditation when we're kind of doing it as a collective or as a group. But the last question I wanted to ask is, if anyone was listening or watching this video on YouTube, if they wanted to support you, what's something that they can do?
Support me. Well, I'd like for anybody who is very interested in what I talked about, I actually have a book of two short stories of all these things that came together. and it's on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. It's called The Intuitive and Meditative Journeys of an Empath, but it's 2 short stories. So the generational trauma with my mother is called Dying with Unfinished Business. The second one is short, what I talked about being an empath and finding that place that I meditate. That's called The Visions of the Weeping Willow Tree. And they're both in that book.
Okay.
So if they're really interested in those topics, I would recommend it. Is that support?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I just want to make sure that anyone I have I have on an interview, that like people that are listening or watching the video can reach out or give support to the people that I'm interviewing, because I think that's important. I think it's important kind of we all support each other. So that's the one question that I always want to wrap up the interview with is, how can we support each other's? And
I'd be happy to talk to anybody who's interested in those topics. I think it's hard, it's such a big topic what we're talking about.
I know
it's hard to
right. But I'll put the books in the description in the YouTube videos, or even in the podcast, and people can people can go on, and if people want to send any messages or comments of words of support, they can do that as well. But I wanted to thank you for at least for being on here with me and chatting about your journey. It really is, it sounds like it really was a journey, and it really is a journey because it continues. Right. So I just wanted to thank you for sharing your story, and I do believe our paths cross for a reason, and I hope they cross again.
Yes, I'd like to get to know what you do better, and thank you for following your intuition. I'm glad I met you.
Thank you. Sue continues her spiritual journey in Maryland with friends and family. If you'd like to purchase her book, you can find it on Amazon or in the description below. If you or someone you know would like to share their healing journey, please email us at thisthingcalledlife7@gmail.com. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe.